My name is Stephanie Hofmann. We're here with Pascal Brooks at Brooks Winery, and it's September 25th. And we'll start with our very first question, which is why wine?
It's part of who I am and where I come from. It's kind of funny hearing it as a question, as if I chose, but it's more of the luck of the draw, and I was very lucky to be born to my father and to have my aunt, who was the one that then made this business what it was. But realizing the older I get how cool wine is and how lucky I was to be in that position, it's, why wine is maybe more of a question for my future and if I want to go into it, but instead it's, for me, it's just so inherent. It's so much a part of my background. So good food and good wine was always just there. So it's definitely a good thing. I'm very lucky.
So what was it like growing up around the wine industry?
You meet really eclectic people and I think how I always think about it is you have a group of people that, have to be passionate and have to have an aggressive or obsessive trait in them to do this kind of work. And I don't really know too much of the taste of that work, but I can appreciate the scope of how much one has to do in order to be successful. And, when it's your product or your company on the line, you happen to put everything into it to make sure that it works and it is your vision. And I think to think that you have to have those in order to be successful or to at least fit what you want to do and make the product that you do, it takes a really special kind of person. And if that's, really all there is in the wine industry is people that have that trait, it's a very energetic and driven group of people. And I think that's what really strikes me about it. So growing up around the wine industry, it's like you had incredible people. They all came from different walks of life. Many of them had wine as their second option. And then they just seem happier. I don't know. You talk to so many people and it's like, oh, it's a career change. Yeah.
Can you talk about some of the early memories, either in the winery or in the vineyard that you have?
Yeah. So when my dad worked at Mesura, I was so used to going with him, and it's funny that waking up in the morning, he would always tell me that we were late when I would sleep over there, and we'd have to get up for work. He bought me the same black beanie he had so we could hop in the car, and he always told me that we were late and it'd still be dark outside. And think about it, it's like my dad woke me up pretty early just to say that we're late just so we can get to work, and we'd eat a cinnamon roll at, what's the corner coffee shop near where Kame used to be in Mac? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do not.
I think it's actually called the Cornerstone or something. But
okay, yeah.
Yeah, getting out to the vineyard in Mesura and seeing all the huge compost piles and seeing how they, seeing his approach to biodynamics and him telling me that there are gnomes in there because that's what, that's what the steam is them living in their homes. That always stuck with me. And then going into the profession that I've kind of been doing now with farming, it's, seeing the steam rise, I've always thought of that little memory, that moment. And yeah, I have a lot. I used to help out in the winery, even though I didn't do much. That was very impactful to the business, but I know it's kind of like here. It's maybe people like having me around, and I know that if I worked for my dad and was there for him, he was happy for it just because I was with him, and it's the same with a lot of other people I've helped out since.
Yeah. So what do you like about wine?
I like beer.
What? Oh.
I'm teasing. I really like wine. I really like the work that goes into it. I know that for me, I'll drink wine, I like wine, but for me, what is really attractive to me is how much work goes into it and the wide range of tasks that one has to do and the knowledge that you actually pick up. And it seems so uninviting to many people and imposing and very intense just to even have like a small foothold in understanding it. And I think what's amazing is staying around, is learning just a little bit more each time, and no one puts you down. No one really seems to do it to prove you wrong, and not really the people that I've been in contact with. And I think that's what I really love, is there's a huge wealth of knowledge here for a group of people, and if you happen to tap into it or happen to work hard enough, just to work, you'll learn something from it and pick it up naturally. And like I mentioned, I love just the work in it. There's something so great about getting up in the morning when no one happens to be up and you're just by yourself and you're seeing a beautiful view, whether it's here or anywhere else in the Willamette Valley, because Brooks doesn't have a monopoly on gorgeous weather, great views. I love this place so much that I think just to work in wine means that you're realizing a different part of the world or realizing a different kind of occupation that most people don't have the good graces to have. So it's pretty special.
So do you share the same passion for Riesling as your dad had?
Oh yeah. And it's just by chance. It's whenever I drank wine, it was Riesling that I really, really loved. It was funny, my girlfriend's French, and going to visit her, it was really funny that when I visited her in her home, I was talking to her mom, and we're all really close, and her mom was asking me if I liked wine. I'm like, yeah, I love Riesling, and she's like, and it surprised me to see they're very traditional, because I love Riesling. That's what I just always have. And for these people to say we like Cabernet or we like Merlot or like those kinds of things, it was funny to hear that, because the American version of those is very different from the French. And so to try the California wines and be like, I don't really know if I like this so much. It was really funny to voice my opinion, and just because it was German, they're like, oh, we don't like it that much. It's not a French product. So, but yeah, I definitely love it. I think what's amazing is when I try some of my dad's Rieslings, just because they're amazing. And I don't know, just they age so well and taste so great, and also just think it was a product my dad labored over is amazing. But even then, it's listening to anyone else talk about Riesling. It's listening to people talk. It's listening to the possibilities, the actual character of the wine. From what I understand is, it's a lot more not artistic, but the person's craft really comes out. And when you have someone like Chris who makes it so well and has so many different arrays and has a vision that you can't even tap into, but you only have the product of, you can really tell. I love the expression, and it's not that I don't really know this, being still separated from the industry, or not really a part of the work, but it's funny, the expression, we have our Pinot to support our Riesling habit, and it's just, the people that have Riesling are the ones that love having it, love making it, and it's to think that, it was tore out here however many years ago to make room for Pinot, or to think that some people, like my dad, really fought to have it because they loved it. Again, it's an expression of the kind of wine people wanted to make and what they wanted to enjoy, and it takes a passionate streak. But yeah, for me, Riesling is incredible. That was my first aha moment of wine, of drinking. I'm like, wine's pretty good. I like this a lot. And it was just, yeah.
Do you remember which Riesling it was that aha moment?
It was a 2007 Willamette Valley Riesling. So yeah, it was ours. But
what are some of your favorite memories with your dad?
I have a lot. I don't know. Getting older, it's hard to think that I forget a lot, and I'm so inclined not to, that when I do write or when I do try to put anything away, it's always to remember. So my notebooks are filled with memories, just because the older I get, the more I seem to move on, which is a shame. But with my dad especially, it was, whenever I think of being happy, I think of driving along the Oregon coast in the winter. And I remember just being in his car, and being a kid, I wanted to play my Game Boy SP, which he fought against my having, and he was like, all right, you get an hour on it, when we were together. And I don't know what we were doing, but I remember we would stop at different places, and of course he was doing work, but it was still such a wonderful experience. In any case, it was playing my Game Boy SP, my dad, telling me to be with him, pay attention, and he grabbed it and threw it out the window, but pretended to. He hit it, of course, but it was just that trip of, there's such a degree in the Oregon sunlight in the winter that when I see it, I'll call my girlfriend or I'll talk to her. It's hey, real quick, go look outside, because it's for me, that's always the image of my happiness. Is, I don't know if it's because he's there or if it's because of just the event, but I know that those are my favorite memories, or just, those trees, the way the sun filtered through, just driving, huge hair-bending turns. But I don't know how long we were gone, but it seemed like a long time in my memory. So.
And then what life lessons did your dad teach you?
With the people that I still have, I appreciate a lot more because I know it doesn't always have to be that way. I don't always have the possibility in terms of life decisions because I've always argued, like, I don't know if my dad, I mean, of course he didn't intentionally, die, but it's funny wondering how I should view these lessons that were imparted as a result of his death, whether it's to think that, oh, that's another lesson he taught me, or whether that's just a fact of life. When I think of the fact that anything can go under your feet, it's both anxiety inducing as well as something to actually like catch on the coattails of. And so, with my dad, I have a really close relationship with my mom as a result that a lot of people my age don't have, because she had to take care of me in a way that made me realize it's like, I am really, really lucky to be who I am and to have the people that I do. And so one thing my dad taught me, and I'm always talking in this way as it's a result of his death, not just what he did. I'm always thinking of, making sure that I enjoy it, making sure that it's appreciated. And whether it's, talking to people and just telling them I love them, and having it be clunky but still like getting the point across, if I can, because it's like, it's a two-way street. It's like I could go at any time, you could go at any time. Like I'd rather and people always say seize the moment as if it's such a positive thing, but seizing the moment may also just have like really like weird outcomes as a result. But yeah, I've definitely like made it weird with people of just like saying how I felt, and I think if I can do that and not regret it, that's something I'm so happy for. And again, that goes back to my father and thinking of it as being, you don't know. Anything could happen, and everyone tells you that, and I hate thinking that, my life follows those cliches and what I think is so true, but there is still something so, not gratifying, but knowing that I have the chance now to do what I otherwise might not later. And, thinking about it could be anything. So that's what his death taught me. But at the same time, my father followed in kind of the similar philosophy of just, from what I understand of him and from what I know of him, is it was just, he didn't really let fear get in the way, even though he feared things. And I know that's the same thing with me, whether he taught it to me or not. But he had this drive that when people talked about him, when I read his journals, when I see pictures, like people always describe it as this grin. And that's how I always view myself that way, and I see that in my dad of like, if you have a devilish grin, you're kind of cooking something up. Like you're not really sitting on your hands. It's you're still moving, and it's not because you're afraid to slow down. It's just because you're just trying to do what you can when you can. Like you're not letting anything get past you. And so, he taught me unintentionally through how other people talked about him, through how he talked about himself, that if you have that energy, if you realize what's at stake, if you realize the limits, you can do a lot more than you otherwise think you can. And, granted there are limits to that, but at the same time, I think you can at least surpass some of the limits that you put on yourself. And so that's what I strive for. Or thinking about my dad, like I know that was a lot of, not necessarily his MO, but I understand that he wouldn't let himself get in the way of what he wanted. And that's how part of the winery started. That's how he made friends, and that's how he was a polarizing character. And it's like, you either love him or you hate him, and you can decide pretty quick. And I mean, maybe that's excessive, but if you have a character like he did, it's like if you don't like him, tough. And I try to embody that because, well, I try to be that way, with or without my dad being that. But I know that to think that we may share something like that I don't want to limit myself with what I want to do, we'd have some pretty cool conversations. Yeah.
Jimi often said that he wanted Brooks to be a family legacy. Did you ever feel pressure to take that on?
I never felt pressure with him. of course, with his passing, the winery getting bigger, it was all like, ever since like I was a kid, ever since that happened, it was always a question of, do you want to do this? And Janie and Chris, they did mean it, and they did say it, like always saying to other people, it's like, well, we don't ever want to push him, like we'll give him his own liberties, like he can do whatever he wants to do. If he wants to do this, great. And they practiced what they preached, which was awesome. But there's still some sort of, at this point, like the winery's been so far along that I have it here if I want. But my dad only had the winery for 6 years, and Janie's now going through Janie and Chris are now going through their 14th harvest if it's just after his passing. And so, they don't really do it for me or him anymore. I mean, like maybe a part of it is, but now it's like, this is its own thing. It's its own powerhouse. It's its own entity in the valley, and it makes an amazing product. Like now we have abilities we never could have dreamed of even 5 years ago. And so anyway, I've felt the pressure for myself of being like, well, you have this incredible opportunity, like why would you let this go to waste? So many people are so, haven't been born with like under the right stars. And so I felt it that way, but never from other people. And with my dad, I remember working harvest with him, or maybe like a day or two, I don't know how long I actually did it, and wearing a sweatshirt, and I was wearing it at school, and it had wine stains on it. It didn't look good. And my dad picked me up. He's like, I know what those are. He's like, yeah, that's a badge of honor. Like he was kind of doing that thing, and yeah. And so with him, it was never him telling me like, you have to do this. My dad, like my mom, after he passed, were just, really interested and dedicated to my being a kid, or supporting me. So they don't have to worry, or so I don't have to worry. And so, no, I never felt pressure from him. I think the thing I love about this industry and about him is that it was very inclusive, even though he still forced me to go to the winery with him. Like when I was there as a kid, I hated being there because, I didn't hate it, but I got bored. So I would just, hang out, sit, help him. But you can't really do much when you're 5 or 6 years old. But I know he loved my company, so it wasn't that much of an issue for him. But yeah, I never personally, from him, felt the pressure to follow through with this. I think he himself was still getting off his feet, so it wasn't so much. Like maybe that was the long-term goal, and maybe Janie helped. God, I'm tired. Janie helped kind of actualize the process, or actualize this product into being what it is, as did Chris. But I don't think it was so much of he's trying to think of my taking over the responsibility. I think so much of, he's building what's otherwise his legacy, even though he's not trying to build his legacy. It's just a product of, and.
So 12 winemakers helped Brooks, as you know, through the 2004 harvest, and Janie continued the winery for you to have if you were ever ready. What's it like having the Oregon wine community devoted to preserving it all for you?
I think it goes back to what I was saying about Janie and Chris now doing it a lot more for the enterprise itself than I think it is for me. And so with that, I don't really think they do it for me, kind of steward it. I think they helped us get off our feet and really, helped even thereafter. But I don't want to say that they do it. Well, no, it's not that I don't want to say they do anything for us. I don't want to say that, they helped, and this is a community, and people are there for each other. And for those people, they were there because losing my dad was a loss to them or to the industry, and, or at least just on a personal level. And I think, to make something and to help with something they love, it wasn't a question. It's like doing anything that you love for someone. And I think that's what is kind of, a testament to this place, is people are just good people. It is a community, and, people aren't looking to one-up each other. They're all looking to make wine, and it's not, like people talk, they're not necessarily all together, but they are serving together for their interests. They're trying to protect their passions. They're trying to help each other, like we buy fruit from each other. Everyone talks in that sort of way. Everyone eats dinner. Everyone knows each other's names. And it's always like, you think about it and you have so many people in an area and you can try so many different wines, and so it's amazing to know the community exists and people helped us, and I'm sure at certain points we'll help other people, or I would hope that we do, and it's not so much paying it forward or paying it back, it's just we do it out of a labor of love, which so many people describe this industry to be, where I said it takes an obsessive trait to work doggedly or to know you have so much riding on this but still want to make it. And so anyway, we had 12 people come together and we wouldn't be here without them. And that's just the simple fact. And we don't have to be here, and yet at the same time, we're still following his passion, we're still following our own passion. So it's still, it's pretty incredible to say the least.
Can you talk about your Aunt Janie and how she has had an influence on your life and your relationship to this winery?
Mm-hmm. Before my dad died, I saw Janie a couple of times, but I would never see Janie this much, I don't think, or have this close relationship or know her that well. To actually sit and think of if my dad was still around and how I would know Janie as my aunt, we would talk, but now it's a very different relationship. It's like my mom's my mom, but it's like having another figure with whom, you talk about, you catch up with. It's like, she's not an aunt and she's not a mom. She's just her own powerful figure in my life. And so it's, she kind of took up the plate and made her put herself where she was needed once my dad died, both in the industry and in my life. And, this place isn't so much about my dad anymore, or me, as it is about her and Chris. And, but that's not to say it's not a story that is our origins or just still something I think about on a daily basis outside of the winery. It's just, Janie herself is a force to be reckoned with, but never something so much out of danger. But, she's now become the figure here, in the Oregon wine community, and as a spokesperson for Oregon wine outside of Oregon. I think, she's learned so much, and she now has so much influence, and she's still learning, and she's built something incredible. And I know for a fact that my dad's winery wouldn't be here if it wasn't without her. It couldn't be. And I think what's amazing is just to think that with Janie, it's not her, we're just, if it wasn't Janie, no one else could do it. Janie is just so industrious. She's, maybe it's just because they were brother and sister that they had some of the same kind of, sensibilities, but even though she's better at business, it's as much her winery as it is his.
So why do you think people are so interested in the origin of Brooks Winery and the events that happen through it?
I think it's because we tell, that's our story. That's how we tell it. And it is weird to think that my dad only made wine for Brooks for 6 years, and here we are going into our 14th harvest, as I mentioned. And it is weird to think how disproportionate that is, and maybe now we're trying to figure out our next step, even though the important thing is making wine image second. And I don't know, I think a large part is that's, I don't want to say our gimmick, but it's that's us. Everyone knows it's that's as a result of, and I think especially if you appreciate the difference my dad was doing to the difference Chris and Janie make, it's seeing from where you came from. It's not being oh, this was his company, that kind of thing. It's just being this winery, this product, this influence that we may have wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that change in ownership. Or if you know where we came from, you can appreciate how much more, or what we are now, what we've become. And so that's the point I was trying to get across. It's just, like I mentioned, it wouldn't be here. It wouldn't be like it is. We wouldn't have the influence. We wouldn't have the product. But, we still have the passion, but we've had time, and we've been there as the industry has changed, and we've made part of it change. And, I think that's what's so incredible, is just knowing my dad wouldn't do that. My dad couldn't do that. And you can't even compare anymore. It's people ask, or I may wonder, if I had a dad, and it's you can't ask those questions. It's so outside of your reality that you don't know. Mm-hmm. And yet here we are, and our origin story is where we come from, and yet at the same time it's still so much of maybe coming to terms with the past, but it's very distant from the fact of, you know, my father's passing. And so in any case, we're here, and we're here as a result of it, and it's paying homage to who we are, you know.
So what was it like being a part of the American Wine Story?
The film?
Yeah, the documentary.
It was very, from the standpoint of being 14 at the time, it was, I'd never been interviewed for anything. I was still wondering about my body image, and suddenly seeing myself and not knowing my voice, I was like, whoa, this is weird. And so, you know, narcissist dream. Yeah, anyway, it was cool. David was a really nice guy. Watching everything, it was really cool. I really liked the way that my dad was a person, and I think what's really difficult for people, I mean, you know, it's our origin story, that's how we talk about it, and I think when we talk about it, it's very, you can't really like say his flaws or like some of like the funny things that happened about my dad without losing customers, and so it's hard to make the point that, you know, he was also a person and not necessarily just a tragedy. And so anyway, I really liked the way that David Baker did it, because it still kind of falls in the fact of, it's, you know, never say a bad word of the dead. Not that my dad was bad or there's much to say that's bad, but how a lot of people talk about him is very different from who I know and who I remember. And for me, there's a difference in people who knew my dad and people that, you know, that didn't, and that's fine, and there's nothing wrong with either. But in either case, I liked how David portrayed him. It was very, you know, I don't know, like, it's maybe a good direction for like where he was going. I felt bad. I was like, whoa, that's weird that, you know, we're talking about my dad or I'm on the screen so much. But yeah, you just, you know, in terms of maybe making a point of what his aim was and what he was trying to portray, it's, yeah, I don't know. I liked his portrayal. I thought David was a really great guy. I thought he was very respectful with that. I know I was upset with some of the other portrayals that may have happened around that time. And he just, yeah, he was a great guy, and you knew what he was going with, and he wasn't, you know, he was actually trying to tell a story, and it was good. Do you have like any specific questions of the American Wine Story, or like?
No, is there anything else you want to go in on for that?
No, but it was pretty cool, you know, realizing like, oh, I'm in a movie, but then also being like, don't make a big deal out of it, like worry about being a person or be funny or like that kind of thing, and then worry about the fact that you're in a movie. And so like, it was weird. It was cool at the same time. It's like, I still don't really know how to think about it when you have people that were there and like people, yeah. It was awesome to see some of my dad's friends interviewed. It was great to think that, you know, he tried to get the story for what he was trying to capture. I think as soon as he like started talking to us and walked in, he was like, oh, this is a much bigger picture than I had in mind. And it's cool because in that respect, he actually, like, rather than taking it at face value or surface value, he, like, you know, he actually tried to go in and understand my dad as best he could and understand the influence, understand the person. And it's like, you know, when he talks about him, it's, you know, you can't really encapsulate a person that, you know, for so many people, like, did feel it was such a loss. And so when David talks about him, it's like he tries to make the fact it's a very large figure. You can't get the point. So, yeah, I don't know. It's cool.
So do you think you want to join the Oregon wine industry?
Yeah, it's seeming more and more attractive to me. But at the same time, it's like, you know, it's the same question I've always been asked. So it's something, and it's not that it's not, you know, a worthy question. I think it's people ask it because it's a good one, and not to make conversation, but to actually be like, what are you doing, dude? I know if I want to do it, it'd be for the work. I think I just love, you know, I haven't gotten a full taste of the work. I haven't gotten any of the hard things out of the way. Like, you know, there's one thing to work for a day or two. It's another thing to work day in, day out during like the peak of harvest. And so I know if I'd want to, it'd be really just for the community and for the work and, you know, the amazing food. But then I also know how much work goes into it and how much that, you know, may otherwise, you know, I know that I would have to live a lot of my life beforehand before I ever decided to make a commitment like this. and it's in good hands. And I don't mean it to be like I'd show up and immediately be like, yeah, like I'm ready to take the keys. It'd be more, it's like, you know, I would want to enjoy, I'd want to figure out if there's anything else that I want to do in life, and if it happens to be that winemaking is what I want to pursue, then I know that I'm going to have to work my way up from the top. I think this is an industry that's incredible because you can't show up. Title doesn't mean much for the people that you actually respect. It's how hard can you work? Can you make something that, you know, like, not a matter of like, oh, like, does it impress me? It's a matter of like, does it show off what you're trying to go for? And so I think there's still so much that's incredible about this industry that you can't find anywhere else, that I would love to. I'd be honored. I would hope that I do well by my dad's name, by my own standards, by that of other people. And so, yeah. But then again, like, I do work outside of the winery, like when I'm in school, like working on a farm, or you know, helping out like on different places and just trying to learn, and like even making booze myself, like just because it's something I want to learn. It's something that I grew up with. It was something that, you know, is so cool. And once you kind of get a taste for it, you realize it's really accessible. Like, it's not that hard. It's just really perfecting and tailoring everything to your interests. And so if this is where I end up, I'm lucky, and I'm trying to pursue a lot of the same sort of vein, because I know that that's where I come from, and that was the interest that was ingrained in me. And so, you know, I already have an idea for what kind of jobs I want to work and what kind of jobs I don't want to work. So.
What part of the wine industry interests you the most? Is it winemaking, being in the vineyard, or business?
It's actual production.
Production, yeah.
But then again, there's so many good people already doing it that it's, again, the same situation, that if I go in there, I'm going to have to, you know, I'm really fine making a name for myself and not having to write off of this one. You know, if I'm going to do it, I want to work. You know, I could have any open door, but I don't want to be like, oh, the spoiled owner's son from that place. It's like, if I'm going to go into it, title isn't going to mean much. And so, yeah, I love production. That's always, like, production and winemaking, or production and actual vineyard work has always been my interest. And that's because my dad did it. And, you know, he also had the trouble of selling the wine, and, you know, I could be good at talking to people when I'm awake, but I know that for me, like, to be quiet, to be cold, to hurt, to get your workout in, and to feel like you actually deserved, you know, eating a huge amount of food because you know, worked a little bit through lunch, and you just need to pick me up. Like, for me, that feels really satisfying. It feels really like you earned something, or that you earned something for yourself. And so I know for me, and it's not to say that the people that sell wine don't, I just, I know for me, like, that's the kind of work that, you know, there's like the actual process involved, the qualities involved, the experience. It's what I love.
And then, so what do you think is the future of Brooks Winery?
I think the future of here is the future of maybe a lot of places in the valley. I think Oregon has changed so much that, you know, Janie was really enterprising, and she made, like, now you see so many people going out to Oregon, you know, and not saying that she was the one that invented it, but, you know, now it's an experience. It's like the Brooks experience. It's not so much, you know, we used to sit at the old winery and have great wine, but, you know, no one really drove through. We'd sit days waiting for someone just to stop by and be like, oh, a tasting room. And so I think the industry is changing so much that we'll see, but, you know, Janie and Chris have been on top of it from day one and influenced some part of the industry that, for them, you know, I'm sure they can ride out the storm. And it's not saying that there's like a storm coming, but it's like they've always worked through it. They've always, you know, we're not expanding anymore. We're now just trying to perfect and get comfortable and work from year to year. And so, yeah, we're still so young here. We're still figuring out where we are, what kind of experience. This is still a place, or maybe was up until a little bit ago, where small producers could actually make and try to follow their passion. And so I hope that remains. And, you know, yeah. So I talked instead about the changing of the industry, or from what I see, or from what I understand, or what I hear, and it's different. And I think for the future of Brooks, it's now maybe getting comfortable in our own skin and making a little bit of a different, or making a legacy or an identity that's a little bit outside of just my dad. And so, yeah.
And then what do you think is the future for the Oregon wine industry in general?
Well, you can't ask me that. I'm not really a part of it. Oh, I'm teasing. I don't know, you see the valley being developed a little bit. You see a lot of people tearing out, fruit that doesn't really do well for grapes. And so, you see changes, but I don't really know what that means apart from maybe there are going to be a lot of changes and a lot more of the settling of the West or settling of the Willamette Valley, because people have discovered it. Now it is being seen. Now people are coming out to here for it, whereas before it was very, and maybe that's just what I want to believe or maybe what I happen to remember, but where it was very different. Like where you could have small producers make it, where you could have friends get together and trade secrets just for the small amount of wine that they produce themselves in their basements or in the small, like on the side lots when they're working for their, larger winery. And so, I don't know, we'll see.
Do you have any idea what the future of Riesling in the valley is going to be?
On that I could say even less, but the people that like Riesling, I think like Riesling, and we have so many different selections just from such a small local area that it shows what's possible. And maybe people are liking Riesling more often. I think people are definitely making the attempt to, like the ones that really love it, the ones that are in the industry of like, actually distributing it and having tastings and showing off what the Willamette Valley has to offer, because what places can grow Riesling and Pinot and stuff. I mean, well, there is that place, but at the same time, it's like, it's incredible to think that we now have something that can produce so much with someone who knows what they're doing. And so the future of Riesling, like I think it's established, I think it's here, and we'll see.
Are there any challenges in the future that you're thinking as a young person maybe joining the industry to look out for, like climate change or anything like that?
Yeah, I think about that. Like right now, my school, like I'm in school for sustainable agriculture, so who knows? But at the same time, like what I think about is there's a reason why French producers are buying land in England. It's because they're trying to anticipate what may be coming, or what I think is, not what I think, what is coming. And so we'll see. I think there's still that's going to affect so much more than the wine industry that, everyone has to stay in business. You hope people don't go under, but that'll affect so much more than just that. So it's not to make the impact on wine small. It's maybe to make a point of, there's going to be a lot more issues we're going to be facing, or a lot more that's going to make things difficult. And, you have to wonder how this place will change with people moving, with water use, with, if the grapes can survive here anymore or something like that. And so, yeah, I don't know. We'll find out. Right now we're doing well, but of course you have to think for the future. As a young person also, maybe just as an individual, going into the wine industry, if I am working, if I'm doing that kind of thing, I'd want to make sure that, that I can be like my dad, and the fact of being the kind of person he was and being, making my own identity. And so anyway, yeah, there's a lot to look out for in the future. But this valley's been here a lot longer before we ever have, and who knows, maybe it'll open up some amazing new places to grow wine as well. But
is there anything else that you want to talk about? We just went through all the questions.
No, nothing on my mind.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.